We're coming to you live from West Africa, Ghana, that is,
Yes.
where the Torah is a lifestyle.
Amen.
As MHG. We'd like to say thank you to everyone for visiting us on another edition of
Let's Talk Torah.
All right.
Yes, we are part of the ministry, Maloha Going Learning Center.
Where the Torah is a lifestyle.
We are the Ghana branch.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for following us on Let's Talk Torah.
So this evening we're going to get into another beautiful study.
Mm-hmm.
This will give us a type and shadow of Yeshua HaMashiach in the person of Joseph,
Mm-hmm.
the fourth generation. We have been studying up to this point from Genesis chapter 1.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're in chapter 37, which is an ongoing documentation history
Mm-hmm.
of truth in creation.
Mm-hmm.
And Yahweh is telling us the end from the very beginning. And so it's written across the generations. We know that Messiah himself came in 42 generations into mankind history, starting with Abraham. And so tonight we are looking at those 4 generations. So we have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and now Jacob's 12 sons, 1 daughter. So at this point, we are going to start with Joseph. Joseph as a youngster, as he tells dreams to his family, to his older brothers. Very, very informative to see where this picks up from the age of 17. And how we see Joseph once again as a type and shadow of Messiah. But he becomes governor, but through great trial and tribulation, this place. He's beaten, he's left dead, all by his brothers, sold into slavery. But then we see that it plays out in the favor of Israel. Later on, we will read where he becomes the governor to Egypt, second in command. And then at some point, he becomes the governor after Pharaoh passes. And so as we begin to go through the history of the 4th generation, let's open up to Bereshit, Genesis, chapter 37, and we will continue through chapter 40. All right. If you are ready, let's begin 37 and 1. And Yaakov dwelt in the land of his father's sojourning in the land of Canaan. This is the genealogy of Yaakov. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding flock with his brothers, and the young man was with the sons of Bela and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought an evil report of them to his father, and Yisrael loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a long robe. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and were not able to speak peaceably to him. And Joseph dreamed a dream and told it to his brothers, so they hated him even more. And he said to them, please listen to this dream. So, see, We were binding sheaves in the midst of the field, and see, my sheaf rose up and also stood up. And see, your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, Shall we indeed reign? Shall you indeed reign over us? Shall you indeed rule over us? Mm-hmm. So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Verse 9. Dreamed still another dream and related it to his brothers and said, See, I have dreamed another dream. And see, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars bowed down to me. And he related it to his father and his brothers. And his fathers rebuked him and said to him, What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall we, your mother and I, and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you? And his brothers envied him, but his father guarded the words. And his brothers went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. Mm-hmm. And Yisrael said to Joseph, Are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shechem? Come, I send you to them. So that he said to him, Here I am. And he said to him, Please go and see well with your brothers and well with the sheep, and bring back word to me. So he went out, he sent him out of the valley of Hebron, and he went to Shechem. And a certain man found him, and see, he was wandering in the field, and a man asked him, saying, What do you seek? And he said, I am seeking my brothers. Please inform me where they are feeding their sheep. And said, They have left here, for I have heard them say, Let's go towards Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. And they saw him from a distance against him. They saw him from a distance. Before he came near to them, they plotted against him to kill him. Then come now and let us now kill him and throw him into some pit. Mm-hmm. And say, some wild beast has devoured him. Let us then see what comes in dreams. 21. But Reuben heard and rescued him from their hands and said, Let us not strike his being. And Reuben said to them, Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him, in order to rescue him out of their hands and bring him back to his father. Mm-hmm. So it came to be, when Joseph had come to his brothers, that they stripped Joseph of his robe, the long robe which was on him, and they took him and threw him into the pit. Mm-hmm. And the pit was empty, no water in it. And they sat down to eat a meal, and they lifted their eyes and looked and saw a company of Ishmaelites come from Gilead with their camels bearing spices and balm, myrrh, going to take them down to Mizraim. 26. And Yehudah said to his brothers, What would we gain if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hands be upon him, for he is our brother, our flesh. and his brothers listened. And men, traders, passed by, so they pulled Joseph out and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 silver. And they took Joseph to Mizraim, Egypt. And Reuben returned to the pit, and Joseph was not in the pit. And he tore his garments. And he returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone. And I, where am I going? Where am I to go?" So they took Joseph's robe, slew a male goat, and dipped the robe in the blood, and sent the long robe and brought it to their father and said, "We have found this. Please look. Is it the robe of your son or not?" And he recognized it and said, "It is my son's robe. An evil beast has devoured him. Joseph is torn to pieces." And Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth his waist and mourned for his son many days. And all the sons and all the daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "Now let me go down into Sheol to my son in the morning." So his father wept for him. And the Midianites had sold him in Mizraim to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guards. Hallelujah. We like to say welcome to our guests. Thank you for visiting us.
On Let's Talk Torah. So let's talk Torah.
Chapter 7 goes into a major portion of Joseph. Notice that it says from the very beginning, this is the genealogy of Yaakov.
Right.
And immediately they go to Joseph, who is the 11th child.
Interesting. And then we see where Joseph is his coat. It's called the coat of many colors, but we know truly it's more of a coat of esteem. So where he is replacing the firstborn son, Reuben, he's replaced the firstborn son, Reuben, and now it's no longer the firstborn of the unloved wife, but now it's the firstborn of the loved wife, Rachel.
Exactly. And of course, this is kind of a little bit of ahead, but it's the story of Joseph, who will become the governor of Egypt, but at the age of 30, received that esteem.
After that.
Also because of dreams. So the dream will lead us there, because what has to happen now, because of his dream at the age of 17, our timeline, his choose at this time to get rid of him. He's only 17.
Right.
But tells his dream to his brothers. Their hatred began to build.
Right.
Then he had a second dream that now he shares with both his brothers and his father. And there's something very peculiar that the father says to him, and verse 9. And here's another dream. Let me finish verse 9. So in the middle of it, "I have dreamed another dream, and see the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bow down to me." He related it to his father and his brothers. And listen to what his father said.
Mm-hmm.
And his father rebuked him
Yeah.
and said to him, "What is this dream you have dreamed? Shall we, your mother and I, and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you?" 11, his brothers beat him.
But
His father guarded the word.
guarded the word.
But there's something peculiar here. His mother have already
Passed away. Mm-hmm.
But Yaakov included her by saying, "Shall we, your mother and I, along with your brothers, bow down to you?" And this is prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of the mother who is no longer with them.
Well, is there, because Leah's still there.
Right.
So I'm just about this. That what if he related that as Leah being left, and now she is a mother, being like a mother to Joseph. Well, I think Bila would be probably more like a mother, because she was the nurse to, or not the nurse, the
she was the servant.
The servant to
Rachel.
So she would have been really close Rachel in raising, Joseph. So I'm wondering if Yaakov is kind of using that in a way to, that's why he's speaking of it like present, because it's clear that Rachel is gone. She has passed away. They've already buried her. But one of those women would have stepped up to be a mother to him, because he's still young. He's 17, but he would have been,
right, and
someone that was like a mother figure. I'm just wondering.
Right. I think that we could speculate along, but when he was about to be traded into slavery, who did he call on? He didn't call on anyone alive. He called on his mother.
He called on his mother. But I think that's a regular thing. I mean, and any black man, we saw George Floyd down on the ground, and his mother
had already passed.
Was
and so he was crying for his mother.
For his mother, yeah. So it could be maybe Yaakov. I just thought about that,
right?
Because
I understand.
Those women would still have been like a mother,
mothers.
To him, because his mother, passed away. But I agree. I think because of the love that Yaakov had for Rachel, that he was probably Rachel. I just wanted to kind of throw that in there.
And like I said, that can be very speculatory in nature, because what happens out of it is there's a major contention that comes with one of his brothers, which try to throw his mother in there, Reuben, his mother as next in line, because now
Rachel is deceased,
which is why he at this point, when father's bed with one of his servants, trying to with Bila, defiled Bila. So and this is kind of behind the scenes understanding, and you get this from the book of Place. With Reuben as firstborn, he had an intense jealousy for his mother being next in line. And so he wanted Leah to be, not Leah, but Zilpah. Let's see. Zilpah was Leah's
Right.
servant.
Right. And Bilhah was.
So he wanted
right.
Bilhah to be knocked out of line,
Yeah.
to be the next affectionate part. So he took her and leaving Zilpah to kind of fulfill next to Leah. Leah was the unloved. See, there's all of these parts. There's the slave, and there's the free, there's the love, there's the unloved. And what he was doing, as in, yes, he was making a move to knock Bilhah out of
running.
Right.
Because it'd be a fear to him. Okay, now Rachel's dead. He's gonna push Rachel up. I mean Bilhah up before my mother. You know, it gives his mother a chance. We read in the book Jasher that he Bilhah drunk, and that he pretty much took advantage of her and raped her. So it wasn't like she.
Well, I never really
went.
I never really got a full thought of rape.
Well,
but
if somebody, if you don't want to have, you know, that's rape.
But
if you're saying no, or if somebody gets you drunk, I mean, it's not like
and that's a strong point there.
You know,
that's a strong point.
That's not consensual.
Right.
It's you.
But she was drunk and deceived.
Right.
So either way we go, and he took her out of line so that his mother can become more of the consecrated wife to fill in where Rachel was missing. So you had the other would be bumped up, and then you have the unloved servant that he wanted to be in line. So like I said, this is where a major contention that even later on when Yaakov is dying, he brings up against Reuben, and it knocks Reuben out of his inheritance, going from the firstborn of the unloved wife to the firstborn of wife.
He jumps 10 other.
Right.
Because he's the 11th son.
The 11th son.
He jumps Reuben. That's one. And 9 other brothers.
Right.
He leaps over to get that position. But we know absolutely, as we don't want to, of course, anyone who has studied, the scripture or the Torah, studied the Bible or know about the story of Joseph, we know what happens, what occurs. And we realize, of course, that, when the brothers come and Joseph is put up there in position, given favor, he's the second in command. Now he truly has to provide for all of his family. So truly the position, rightly so, is placed in his hand. Father Yah gives him favor. He is chosen. Now, and that's the point that I want to get. So we can't choose who Father Yah. We don't get to decide. Father Yah chooses.
Right.
Because it's clear. I mean, even when his father, Yaakov, he's chosen over the brother Esau. Father makes the decision on who he's going to choose to be in position, and then we series of events that occur. So praise Father Yah that Joseph was thrown into that pit, taken into slavery, and then
But it put him in the right
in the
place.
right position so that Israel, the
Would be
nation
saved.
of Israel, be saved and would prosper in Egypt. So that was a major thing. So, but also we have to look at this 17-year-old kind of haughty young man who knows clearly that he is his father's favorite,
Right.
and is using it. And then now he's having these dreams. Father's sending him these visions instead of him taking them and pondering and pondering them to himself. He does have this haughty attitude, and then goes to his brothers who he knows doesn't like him and starts telling them of this dream.
So this actually takes us to bringing Yeshua into the mix, as Joseph is now looking very much like Yeshua.
He is a type and shadow of Mashiach. And he is a Mashiach. You know, that's absolutely what Joseph does, puts him in line as a Mashiach of Israel. He saves them. Because of him, they are saved in a place where there's safety and they have plenty. And you know, you imagine your brother just all of a sudden you're in poverty, and all of a sudden your brother gets the wealth of Oprah or Bill Gates. What's going to happen? You know, if you and your brother were on good terms, well, you're going to probably live pretty good too. You know, so that's thing. But what I was really trying to bring out was the point about him receiving that long coat, that esteemed coat,
right.
And how it was very extremely prophetic, in that he does become the provider for the family with that firstborn inheritance.
Right.
Yeah.
So actually, the robe, which is beginning in verse 13, it says that his father said, "Are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shechem?" That is Canaan. Okay. Shechem is in Canaan. And so he says, "Let me send you there to check on your brothers." So Yaakov, we can see him in the Father Yahweh's place at this point, as Yahweh sends his son, Yeshua. We did another, I think this would be very close to Mark, where it speaks about in Mark him sending his servants down to the farmers to purchase some produce and to beat the servants. As they saw them come, they would plot against him. And so he goes and he has on this robe. And so remember that Yeshua too, they placed a robe on him and a crown on his head, whereas we see Joseph in that that line where it says in verse 15, a certain man found wandering in the field, and he asked, "Who are you searching for?" Well, when Yisrael sent his son, he knew where they were supposed to be.
Right.
Well, this would be Mount Sinai. If you do this, if you keep my command, that would be your Elohim. You would be over all nations. So when he went to where they were supposed to be, this is Israel had left the field of Mount Sinai, so to speak, and began to dabble in idolatry. And when his father brother came and they saw him, let's see, because I want you to see that. Verse 16. I am seeking my brothers. Please inform me where they are feeding their sheep. And the man said, they left here. This is Mount Sinai. We have left the covenant of Mount Sinai. Verse 18. Well, the end of 17.
Okay.
He went towards Dothan, we're told, and Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan, a place they were not supposed to be, in another field. 18. They saw him from a far distance. They saw him before he saw them. And before he came near, they plotted for him. This is the same thing in Mark, where they saw him coming when it says, Yahweh said, you know what? They keep killing them, killing some and beating the others. So let me send my son down there. Surely they will respect him. Well, the son was coming. They saw him in a distance, and they said, this is the heir. They knew who he was. And they plotted against him and said, let us kill him. And all his inheritance, all of his inheritance, we shall gain. We shall inherit. So the same thing with verse 18. Plotted against him, kill him. 19. And they said to each other, see, this master of dreams is coming. Who is the master of dreams? Yahweh, Yeshua. So as the master of dreams, master of the Sabbath, master of the man, they saw him coming and chose to plot against him, to kill him. You have something?
No, I was just wondering how you got there to Yeshua being a master of dreams.
The scripture says, young men would see visions, old men dream dreams. And he said, do I not give you dreams to stir your wisdom and knowledge and understanding? So whenever he's to bring judgment, he always warns us in a dream. Not just us, but he would speak to people like Pharaoh and just different ones in dreams. Lamech, not Lamech, but Abimelech, 1 and 2. You see over that Yahweh,
Pilot's wife.
right? He would give understanding through dreams, and this is what Jacob, when he laid down, he had a dream, and he saw the DNA or the messengers ascending and descending.
Right.
So this is where I pull that Yahweh, number one, is the master of dreams. And when they say, see, this master of dreams is coming, to me that is an indication of Yeshua, who is the master of dreams, because he's in dreams, and I know that personally. So verse 20, now then, come, let us kill him and throw him into a pit, and shall say, wild beast has devoured him. Let us see the coming, what comes of his dreams. And so right there, they too, Pharisees and scribes, pretty much the same way that we would inherit the authority in the earth over Israel. if we can get rid of King of Kings and Master of Dreams. So let's see. Yes. And so,
but even just really quickly in 22, Reuben, even though this, and Reuben, I think, had rap. And it seems very much like he is, this troubled firstborn who is, kicking and scratching and trying to yank his, to love him and to notice him and to be, willing to give
and
him
each of them
his firstborn inheritance.
desired to be the favorite.
But the firstborn, that's a really big thing. And that happens with so many firstborns where there's, issues and, from all kinds of issues concerning that firstborn inheritance, because that is a huge thing. It's a huge responsibility. It's a huge blessing to be that firstborn and to have that firstborn inheritance and to be respected by the patriarch, your father, in that. Reuben, it seems, is not respected in that area only because his mother was just not the right one. I believe if the tide was turned and it was Rachel, that was all those boys, this story would be going very different. So as Reuben, but I believe he gets such a bad rap for all this, but there is so much that has occurred, even with him seeing his mother. A lot of times the younger children, don't see what the older siblings see. They don't understand why certain things have happened in the family. But the older siblings are able to pull in and sit down and talk. This is why this is happening. That very thing just happened with me and my sisters. That there are things that occur in our family. My father was a pastor, and that they had some questions about, and not realizing things that had occurred in his pastoral during his leadership that really made sense once I was able to give them the background story. But I was much older than them, so I saw a whole lot more. So Reuben is in that position, being the eldest, seeing more, seeing his mother, struggling through and trying to get this all in. So he gets a really bad rap. Glad you brought up a point from the book of Yasher about that whole thing with Bila, because he gets the rap. He gets people teach it in a way where Reuben just went and said, "Hey, Bila, you looking good today. I'm going to go sleep with you." No, it was a whole lot more than that. And it wasn't about that. It was about him still wanting his mother to be esteemed.
Right.
To her, who was not esteeming him either. This was a sad story for a firstborn. But like I said, Father Yah chooses who he desires to be in those positions.
And let me make sure that it's clear what I'm saying, because I'm just thinking about it as you. It may be misinterpreted that I was saying that Zilpah is his mother, but it is Leah,
Right.
the unloved wife,
Yes.
is
Mother.
and by him disqualifying Bela, his fear was that because she was Rachel's servant, she could move in,
right,
and knock Leah out.
Rachel's place.
Right, because we'd be filling in for Rachel because she is Rachel's servant, and Rachel is the loved wife.
Right.
So as you were going through, I could kind of see where it might have been misinterpreted what I was actually saying. Not that she was
Reuben's mother,
but Reuben's mother being Leah. His desire is that she would take center focus. All right.
Absolutely.
All right.
This is such a deep story.
Yes, it truly is.
So depth in these sons, Yaakov sons.
Right. And so as we look at these, we're going to move into 38. As we look at the move of Reuben, which is also followed up by the move of Judah, which will come into the next chapter more so. But we will see how Judah is instrumental in it's like a two-year delay in this. But at that moment, Reuben first tried to get them not to kill Joseph, which they settled on, said we will sell him to the Ishmaelites. But the Midianites got there first, took him out, sold him to the Ishmaelites, and now they had to negotiate with the Ishmaelites. So things kind of got out of hand, and they just wanted to get away. So they took his robe, and in taking his robe, they dipped it in blood.
See, let me get this straight. So the Ishmaelite traders came. They sold.
The Midianites jumped in ahead. They wanted to sell them to the Ishmaelites.
But the Midianites,
they got there while they sat down to eat and talk this over. And once they agreed, the Midianites got them in the fished them out, sold them to the Midianites, and then they go and deal with the Midianites, and they got his robe.
So the Ishmaelites heard him in the pit.
No, the Midianites. Let's look at it because there's a major switch that takes place. So verse 37, Genesis 37 and
25 goes into the Ishmaelites.
Right. So we can see in 25 it says, they sat down to eat a meal, lifted their eyes and looked and saw a company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with them bearing spices, balm, going to take them down to Mizraim. So they're going to negotiate with them or sell to them. 26, Yehuda jumps in and said to his brother, what will we gain if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our flesh. His brothers listened. So they agreed. So 28 is the switch. And Midianite traders passed by So they pulled him out, Joseph up, and lifted him out of the pit, sold him
to
the
Ishmaelites
for 20 pieces of silver, and they took Joseph to Misraim. So they got to him first, but then they took the jacket or the robe,
right,
dipped it in blood, took their father and said, "Is this your son?" Not what happened to Yeshua. They took his robe and stripped him. His robe was drenched in his blood because they put a crown of thorns on his head, and they began to strip him. They stripped him, cast lots for his robe. So we can see Joseph in this same way. The brothers dipped in the lamb's blood. Yeshua is the lamb of which the blood is, and now they casting lots for it. So, you ready for 38?
Yep.
38 is a continuation. So we'll just kind of open up the subject matter and kind of go from there with summary. Verse 1 says, "And at that time it came to be that Yehuda left his brothers and turned aside to a man, an Adulamite, whose name was Haran." So we know at this point they went back to their father. He identifies the robe, and he goes to mourning. Yehuda, out of distress, seeing his father go through that, he left the fold of his father. And it says, and at that time it came to be that Yehuda left his brother. So he's now going. And he had a friend who was an Adulamite too. And Yehuda saw that there was a daughter of the Sinai whose name was Shuvah, and he took her and went into her. So she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name. Then she conceived again, called the second son Onan. She conceived again, called his name Shelah. And so verse 6, and Yehuda took a for Now you can see that years are going by. These sons are now grown. The third one is growing. So he took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. So this should start now making us familiar with this Yehuda and but Yehuda's firstborn, was evil in the eyes of Yahweh, so he took his life. Yehuda said, Onan, go to his wife and marry her, and raise up an heir to your brother. Also helps us with what marriage is. So Yehuda, he says, go to your brother's wife and raising an heir. How do you raise an heir? There has to be intimacy, and a child is born. So the child that is born through marrying his brother's wife is the fulfillment of the Torah. Raising an heir to your brother who has died without an heir. This is Adam and Yeshua. And so we see where Adam, he has now taken us to the realm of death, where Yeshua comes to fulfill right here what is taking place, where Yeshua will come and raise up a house to his brother Adam.
So as it goes on, he ends up with both of those sons dying.
Exactly.
And then he blames it on Tamar, his daughter-in-law, thinking she's evil. And she has nothing to do with it, because he was the one who had sons by a Canaanite woman.
Right.
The lineage is not supposed to come down through a Canaanite woman. And he is Yehuda.
Right. Exactly. So
he's the line that Mashiach is supposed to.
And he broke and defiled
that line
by doing the covenant of Abraham, which was to not take a wife from the Canaanites.
From the Canaanites. He was not supposed to. But his daughter Tamar didn't know that she was daughter-in-law. Tamar, right. Not realize, just wanted to be right concerning her. And not saying that she was fulfilling and restoring
right
the lineage of Yehuda back in line, so Mashiach would come through a pure line of Yehuda, not with a Canaanite blood in there, but with the blood of the daughter of a Levite, number one, and a daughter of that Israel.
Exactly.
She restores that back to him. And that's reasons because I can see what makes sense when he says she is more righteous than I.
Right.
You know, because she restores his bloodline back. Married a Canaanite woman have Canaanite sons, and now, you know, have this line of Yehuda, the kingly line, just being skewed with this Canaanite woman.
So the summary of that the father fills his firstborn, secondborn, and their failures, because he was supposed to produce an heir through the firstborn, which would be both a kingly and priestly.
Absolutely.
As firstborn, she is a Levite, and his first is also a firstborn Levite. Exactly.
Right.
So
as Levite and Judah going together.
Exactly.
Right there.
And so, because he defiled it by taking a Canaanite wife, Yahweh said he saw this as evil. We know why the second son was killed, because he spilt on the ground. But he never says why he saw the firstborn as evil. And I can tell you pretty much, because she's the bloodline as well of the Canaanites. This is why I can't accept seed only coming through the man. Right. It has to be both the woman and the man. Because if that was the case, he could have went just with the seed of Yehuda and said, okay, she's not in the picture, so the seed comes from Yehuda. But she was a Canaanite. First of all, she died. Second son, who was born, also died, and as well established at three deaths.
Yeah, witness of it. So also, you know, this Yehuda. Okay, so he was Yehuda. She was Levi. So that kingly priest line of Mashiach. And then also she had twins through Yehuda. So there's again that
Perez and Japta.
There's
Yoktan.
Yotan. Yeah, so there we have again that whole twin scenario, like with Jacob and Esau, you know. So, but Tamar is definitely a daughter of Israel. So she does,
Right.
even though she has to trick her father into doing the right thing, it is now presented as a righteous act because she restored his bloodline back to its proper place.
Well, let's prove that out, because you brought in something that someone can say, well, how do you know she's a priestly daughter? Verse 20 says, and it came to be about 3 months after that Yehuda was informed, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, was whored. And see, she conceived by whoring. Yehuda said, bring her out and let her be burned. Well, that law is for the daughter.
Absolutely. In fact, I believe they'll find that in the book of Leviticus, that if the daughter of a priest sins or if it's found in harlotry or whoring,
yes,
that she is burned. Right. Now, all the other daughters or whoever of other tribes, they're stoned.
Right.
But the daughter of a priest,
she is
burned. So that's how we know that Tamar was from the Levitical priest, priestly tribe. Yeah.
Verse 25, the other part you brought out, when she was brought out, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, by the man to whom these belong, I am pregnant.
Right.
And she said, please examine who these are and feel the cord and the staff. So what we already read is that she dressed herself as a prostitute, verse 21, and she stood to present herself to her father-in-law, who was going to shear his sheep. And because he was in mourning, he needed to be comforted. His wife was already passed.
Yes.
He mourned her, and then he returned to work, heard that her father-in-law was going to shear sheep. She put herself as a harlot. She pretty much tricked him into performing the son's duty. We see this later on with Yeshua. We see it later on with Ruth, Boaz. So this is repeated in different variations, but it all from the law, the Torah, that says if a man refuses to fulfill his brother's duty, then his sandals are taken. She smacks his face and then spits in his face. And he is known in Israel, the man who had his sandals
taken.
Removed. Yes, taken.
Yeah. But
not fulfill
build up his brother's house.
Build up his house.
His brother, because that's a really important thing, Israel, that your name is not blotted out. And one of that's a Hebrew, really a saying that your name is not blotted out of Israel. That means if a man that a man has an inheritance, he has sons to carry on his, and if
the name is entered into the book of life,
and it's it's important that that name is not blotted out.
Right.
And we see that in the story of the daughters of Zelophehad, where they go and they say, "Hey, our father did not commit any
He died
evil
in his own
deed.
sin.
He died as
Not with
right. He died as men do, as men. But he didn't know with Korah his men. So why should his name
be
blotted out? Because he has no sons. And Father Yah gave told Moshe, to listen, give ear to them, and that Father Yah then said, made precedents just for that situation. In case a man has no sons but all daughters. So it's important to know that blotting out his name is a big thing in Israel, and that when a man dies, have time to give his wife turn. That now his brother is supposed to pick up that weight and say, I will build up my brother's house and my firstborn with this woman. And the thing of it is, the Torah doesn't say anything about he has to stay with her and that he has to be, that it's that he takes her as a wife, goes in, and that he has builds up his brother's house, and they have a child, and that firstborn child is now his brother's. He has that child for his brother, so that his brother's name is not blotted out of the history of Israel. That was a big thing.
56, and we'll move into 39, says, and Yehuda examined and said, she has been more righteous than I, because I did not give her to Selah, my son, and he never knew her again. So,
and
verse
she
27, she had twins.
But she was never supposed to be given to Sheila.
Right.
Either.
Right. Exactly. Because he was part of Canaanite blood.
Yeah.
So
it had to be Yehuda.
It's the father who straightened the wrong of the son. In this case, Yehuda, he fulfilled his son's duty, but they were not part of this scenario. So Yahweh also fulfilling what Adam was supposed to do.
Right.
Yahweh came as flesh of man, Emmanuel, and he fulfills what Adam was supposed to do, so that there is an eternity that and not this endless loop. So this is why Yeshua as son was sacrificed, because now he fulfills all of those parts, not just Yehuda, but he's the lamb. Every sacrifice that you can think of, there's that he fulfills in that. 39.
Okay.
30 is also another very strong part.
Potiphar's wife.
Open it up with the first verse. It says, and Yosef had been taken down to Mizraim, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, and Mizraim, brought him from Ishmael, who had taken him down there. And it came to be that Yahweh was with Yosef, and he became a prosperous man. Was in the house of his master, the Mizraim. And his saw Yahweh was with him, and that he made all he did to prosper in his hand. So Yosef found favor in his eyes and served him. And he appointed him over his house and gave into his hand all that he had. And it came to be from the time of that appointment over his house and all that he had, that Yahweh blessed the Mizraim house for his sake. And the blessings of Yahweh was on all that he had in the house and in the field. And he left in Joseph's hand all that he had, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. And Joseph was handsome in form and handsome in appearance. And after these events, so time is multiplying here, it came that his master's wife lifted up her eyes to Joseph and said, "Lie with me." Let's take it up. Take it down a little bit. But Joseph refused and said to master's wife, "Look, my master does not know what is with me in this house, and he has given into my hand all he has. One is greater in this house than I, and he has not withheld whatever from me but you, because you are his wife. And how shall I do this great evil and sin against Elohim?" So right here, this is the story of Potiphar's wife, who then begins to go after Joseph because she became very taken by his looks, and her desire was to have him. And as she desired to have him, she wanted to have him in an intimate way. And Joseph denied her, citing that if I did this, this evil would be against Yahweh. But as the rest of the story goes, we know that when she made her greatest attempt to take him, he left because she had put everything in motion to where she would have him to herself in the, and he took off running out of the house. She grabbed his garment. He left his garment, kept going. She used it against him as though he came after her, and this is my proof that I fought him off. I screamed, and I have witness. He was brought in to mock me as a Hebrew, and she calls him a Hebrew. So therefore, as Joseph now is facing jail time, this starts the ball rolling to where he now will spend quite some time in jail that will put him in the place 30 years old, and he interprets a dream. So this is the flip side, where the dream takes him much further into Pharaoh's house, or Potiphar's house, incarceration. Anything else we knew?
No, so.
You want to take 40 and just kind of bring out?
Okay, so 40, we get into 40. It talks about and Joseph now interprets the dreams of two. We see Joseph, he's in prison for a crime he has not committed, he's not guilty of. But where he's given favor with the prison guards. Now he is like one of those people that's made like in charge of the other prisoners and doing things that everybody sees the favor Joseph on his life. on the favor of Yahweh on Joseph's life.
Mm-hmm.
And then the two prisoners have dreams. So the prisoners are key people within the king Pharaoh's court.
Mm-hmm.
And they find themselves in very precarious situations. And there's a missing ring or missing something is missing
Mm-hmm.
from the Pharaoh's house. And the baker, the king's baker, Pharaoh's baker, and his cupbearer
Mm-hmm.
are the two that are implicated.
Right.
So they're both thrown into prison, and each one of them have a. And then we see the baker having a dream. First, the cupbearer starts talking about his dream. And Joseph tells him, that dreams, interpretations are given by the Most High. It gives these interpretations. He says, so tell me a dream. He tells him the dream. The cupbearer tells him about the dream. And he says, oh, this is the dream is 3 days. In 3 days, you will be lifted back up to your paid place, and you'll be handing the Pharaoh his cup again. And then the baker, the chief baker, says, well, I had a dream too.
Mm-hmm.
This is what happened in my dream. Well, then Joseph interprets his dream. It's not well for the chief baker, because now he said 3 days, your head will be lifted off of your body. You will be killed, brought up before the Pharaoh, and your head will be lifted up off your body, and the birds will eat off of. So anyway.
Yeah, verse 16 brings that out. And it says that he saw
3 baskets on his head.
And the birds
shall eat your flesh.
Eating the bread from the basket that was on his head. So the interpretation is said 3 days, lift your head off your off your shoulders, you were killed.
Woo! And the birds will eat the flesh off of you.
Yes.
So it happened, Pharaoh, it happened. Both things happened. The chief baker is killed because he's found that he's the one who committed the crime. And then the chief cupbearer is presenting Pharaoh with his cup again. So
they're both restored.
He is restored. Well,
just the
cupbearer is restored. But the thing of it is, when we get to the end, it says on 40 and 20, it says that on the 3rd day, Pharaoh's birthday came to be a feast for all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and of the chief baker among his servants. And he restored the chief cupbearer to his post of cupbearing again, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker as Joseph had interpreted. And the chief cupbearer did not remember. That's where I wanted to get to. Joseph said, remember me when you are restored. Remember me to Pharaoh. And he said the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. But it was only forgot for a period of time.
Right.
We see
a couple of years went past.
Yeah, but he had to stay there. So let's talk about why the reason. I mean, just really quickly, because I know it's kind of late. But why all this happened to Joseph? Because in the beginning, as we talked about, Joseph's 17 years old. He know that he's his daddy's boy, and he is the favored one. And he lets everybody else know that. And he makes himself a little menace to his brothers. And all of these things begin to happen. So we see where Father Yah had to humble him.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that when the time came for his brothers to come and need help, that he would remember and that he would be humbled by everything that has occurred and happened to him. And then he would be able to help his family and to be a Messiah to the house of Israel.
And how this come to be is that now Yahweh, master of dreams, give Pharaoh a dream that bothered him very much.
Yes.
And he had everyone trying to interpret this dream.
Yes,
no one could interpret this dream. And so at that point, the cupbearer remembers.
Right. That's what I was saying. He for a period
of time. Once he remembers, he then speaks concerning, because everyone's life is in danger now, because he's like, I'm gonna kill all of you.
He's upset. He's like, I need to know what these dreams
someone
are
better
about.
Tell me.
And none of his magicians, none of his wise men could tell him.
They couldn't. And so, like in Daniel, it comes up in Daniel where Daniel had to interpret the dream as well, because the king at that time, he was going to have everybody, all sayers and wise men killed. And Daniel, he was able, just like we see here, who's also interpreting the dream, and he saves the whole line of Israel, because he's given the job. We won't go into it tonight, but he's in the right place at the right time.
There you go.
That put him into the right job, that put him in the right place at time when they needed to get out of Canaan.
Right.
So pretty much that kind of summarizes up to chapter 40. Anything to cover? We're pretty good.
No, I think that is it.
This is a good place to conclude. I'd like to say to everyone, thank you for joining us on another edition.
Let's talk Torah.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, everyone.